I've struggled with depression off and on through my life. For me, the worst of those years were my high school years when I struggled with suicide ideation on a regular basis. Self-care, mental health was not a discussion then. Mental health support was, you need to man up. That was mental health support. It doesn't really work that way. Turns out there are a lot of things we can do that affect our mental health. Many of the things I was doing were actively harming, so I had to stop harming myself. I had to start helping myself. And I'm going to kind of break it down to, as I think about my mental health self-care, I break it into 3 categories. Impulse control, so what some people refer to as self-regulation. So how do we stop and take time to think? What are the techniques? My brain chemistry. How many of you know how to change your brain chemistry every day? We're going to talk about it. You have the ability to control that. And brain circuitry, the thought patterns we have. And so we'll go through those in some background. You'll see I have a lot of pictures of nature. I'm an avid hiker. That is my go-to self-care. And it's really important for me because I have a vitamin D deficiency. So sunlight exposure is really important. You need vitamin D to produce serotonin. It's really hard to feel good if you don't have serotonin flowing through your body. The exercise, great endorphin release. That ability to get out and drive that exercise. And then we'll talk about nature as we go through. But I use a lot of pictures of nature because neuroscience research is really clear. We make better decisions when we're exposed to nature. But that is not the experience that a lot of kids and young adults are getting these days. Kids are growing up in a different world than existed just 15 years ago. We have removed a lot of protective factors from kids' lives. We have also added some risk factors. So the average high school student today sleeps 40 minutes less than teens did just 10 years ago. Why is that? Well, we all know the answer to it. They've got devices on, so they're sleeping less. They have less in-person friend time, and I'll show you a startling chart on that in just a second. They don't move and exercise as much. An Australian meta-analysis that just was released last week showed the #1 protective factor for mental health is exercise. The actually best mental health treatment is dancing, even above cognitive behavioral therapy. There's movement and exercise is really powerful. Reduce spiritual connection. So 10 years ago, there were more than double the kids had a participation in some faith institution. Why that's important is purpose and meaning are really critical to each of us, but it doesn't have to be through a faith institution, but it has to be replaced. That purpose and meaning has to be there. Volunteering is a really powerful tool for kids to see how meaningful and important they are in the world. Shrinking family sizes. Why does that matter? Because when you have bigger family sizes, you have more people who see you over longer periods of time. As parents, we might see our kids every day, and there might be subtle changes every day. But when a grandparent or an aunt and uncle see them, they see them after 6 months and go, ooh, something's different. They might notice something that was subtle change that we had. So that's added a risk factor. The decline in sunlight. 2/3 of high school students spend less time outdoors than maximum security inmates. The average elementary school child spends 7 minutes a week in unstructured outdoor play. How many of you spent only 7 minutes outdoors in unstructured outdoor play growing up? As a kid, I came from a family of 6, and I was at the older end. My mom had 2 young ones. She's like, out of the house. I'll ring the dinner bell when I want you back in. We were outdoors continuously. Nature is a great teacher because nature runs the show. Things happen, you have to adjust. If there's rain and lightning, if you fall down and you fall on a rock and rip something open, you learn, oh, I need to be more careful. Decline in problem-solving skills. So we've developed a safety culture. We remove problem-solving skills from young adults' lives. So we've seen a big increase in freshmen in college dying by suicide and attempting suicide. They get away from the protective cocoon and they don't know how to fix things. So letting kids explore their problem solving in the capacity that they can handle it is really important. Increasing risk factors, worsening diet and nutrition, ultra-processed food. Our brain chemistry can be changed, but you have to have the ingredients in your body. And ultra-processed food rarely provides it in the way that we need it. Cyberbullying, a widened comparator pool. As kids, at my age for sure, I compared my life to the people I was around, 20 people. Kids today compare themselves to everybody in the world. And they look for the worst comparison. It has done extraordinary damage to their self-image and their belief in where they can be. Political catastrophizing is another issue. I could spend a whole time on fentanyl. We lost 109,000 people to overdose deaths last year. Last week, the state of California announced that they had intercepted in 2023 enough fentanyl to kill 14 billion people. Kids who are dying by fentanyl think they might think they're taking Adderall. So it's not just, and it's the deaths that happen, but it's also the impact it has on all the kids of seeing people their age dying and not being able to make sense of it. And then algorithm-obsessed, inspired obsessions. So we have lots of thought patterns, but the algorithms on social media will reinforce sometimes the worst of those. Fear and anger and hate drive more screen time, which means more ad sales for Instagram, Facebook, and others. So there's a lot of rough stuff kids are dealing with. So let's talk about how we can help them, but how we have to help ourselves, because it's about taking care of ourselves too, to have the energy to help our kids. Just to give you an idea of why activity matters, depression scores, just kids who are a little more sedentary have higher rates of depression. And I'm not gonna, we could spend a lot of time talking about it. Teens who meet up with their friends every day, in the 1980s, it was half the time. Pre-pandemic, it was down to 25%. Now it's less than 20% of kids actually interact with kids. I have a sister who teaches at Neuqua Valley. I was speaking on depression to her psychology classes last December. We're standing out in the hall before first period. Look down the hallway, 150 or so kids in the hall, not a single conversation. Every single kid doing this. And we know from neuroscience research that if I send you a text message on information and you send me something back, there is no oxytocin benefit, happy, feel-good brain chemical. If I say the same words to you, I get to feel good. That social interaction is really important for oxytocin release, one of those feel-good brain chemistries. So as I mentioned, we'll talk about impulse control, brain chemistry, brain circuitry. How many of you think stress can be a good thing? Can stress be good? Yeah, stress is absolutely a good thing. When we're stressed at an appropriate level, we get a boost of adrenaline, norepinephrine that flows through our body, that lets us focus, gives us energy. We can perform at a higher level. The problem with stress is when it's too acute or when it's too chronic. Because along with that adrenaline and norepinephrine, our brains get fed cortisol. And that cortisol starts to build up around the amygdala, which is the fight, flight, or freeze part of the brain. When that cortisol layer gets thick, it prevents impulses from leaving our fight, flight, and freeze mode and getting to our prefrontal cortex where we solve problems. It limits our access to memories. It restricts our ability to regulate emotions. So when people are stressed, they literally can't make good decisions. When you say they're not themselves, they're in fight, flight, and freeze mode, they can't think clearly. So we'll talk about how to de-stress. We don't want to take them from the point where they get fatigued to where there really is a physical breakdown from that stress lasting too long or being too intense. It means we have to take micro breaks. We have to step back. We have to find ways to manage and de-stress in the moment. And there are a lot of techniques that do that. So when stress exceeds capacity, brain cells get destroyed, brain chemistry gets altered, even the structure of the brain can change. So you don't have to raise your hands here, but how many of you sometimes feel you're stressed? When you're stressed, do you always act the best way? How many of us have said something that we regretted almost the moment we said it? I've done it many times. I can even remember specific discussions that I'm like, oh, how do we take those moments? How do we back off and think about what we're doing and get to where our prefrontal cortex actually is involved in our response, and it's not just our fight, flight, freeze mode. So impairs our problem solving, our memory. It actually, when we're stressed, it makes it hard to manage our weight too. Because when you're stressed, the body says, oh, we're at risk of famine or war. I need to store calories because we need to survive what's coming. So being able to break away from that is important. And recovery takes time and knowledge. This just says moderate short-lived stress. I already talked about this as valuable. It makes us more alert. We actually get a boost of memory when we have that moderate stress. But sometimes we get overwhelmed. This is my daughter. She gave me permission to share this. She went on a hiking trip with me. I've hiked a few of the 14,000-foot mountains in Colorado. This was her first long hike on one. And we got about halfway, well, about 2/3 of the way up. And she's like, Dad, I'm done. I have nothing left. I said, okay, why don't we just take a seat? And this is the first time she's just like had it. And I said, let's just take some moment here. Let's do a couple things. First, why don't you put pants on? Because it's 35 degrees and there's 40-mile-an-hour winds. How about you put a hat on? Let's drink some water. Let's get some food. And then, you know what? There's a set of rock cairns, piles of rocks just up the trail. Do you think you can make it to that one? Oh yeah, I can make it to that one. So she had control. She had permission to be done, but she had control of moving forward. We got to the next one. Can you make the next one? Yeah. Can I make the next one? Yeah. Well, let me rest for a little bit, drink some more. We made it to the top. But at this moment, she didn't think that she could get there. So we had to reframe what the expectations were. The expectations weren't that we were going to hike to the top. The expectations were we're going to have a good hike. We're going to enjoy the views. What are the impulse control skills that we know from research make a difference? Deep breathing exercises. How many of you have a routine deep breathing exercise that you do? It has saved me from running so many people off the road on I-88. As I get cut off, like, okay, just let it go. Taking that moment, just breathe in to the count of 4, hold it to the count of 4, breathe out through your mouth to the count of 4, and then maybe repeat that. Just that little act, maybe 30, 60 seconds, lets that cortisol clear, allows you to think clearly. Yoga, we know, works effectively. I have had enough foot injuries that I've added yoga into my workout routine, and one of the things I found is when you're holding downward dog longer than you think you can, you don't think about anything else other than don't fall on your face. That lets everything else that's going on in your world clear. That cortisol layer clears up. Meditation works. Mindfulness practice works. We know from research that prayer that focuses on other people, prayer that gets us outside of ourselves and what we want and focuses on what's for others makes a difference. And exposure to nature. Nature exposure is fundamentally critical to good self-care. We are designed to be in nature. Neuroscience research has made it really clear that we make better decisions when we're in nature. Even 30 seconds of looking at pictures of nature, which is why I use pictures of nature, we make better decisions than if we're confined in this kind of environment. where we can't see anything but bricks. Now, at least here, there's sunlight, but there are a lot of schools where kids are inside of buildings where they never see anything that is nature exposure. In environments like that, it's really important to have plants, to have a water fountain, to have something that has asymmetric movement to it. Grass, trees, anything like that can make a meaningful difference. And this is just some of the studies. We know that it helps emotional regulation, it improves memory, reduces cortisol levels, helps us to focus better. There are a whole range of it. But a lot of young adults and a lot of us as adults don't get enough of that exposure. We need to be spending as much time outdoors as we can. We need that interaction, and we need the challenge that nature provides that goes with it. So changing your brain chemistry. Think of the feel-good brain chemicals. There's a couple of others, but these are the ones that are easiest to manage. Dopamine. There are some bad ways to get dopamine. Cocaine, alcohol, some social media, that like button plays off the dopamine system. So there are ways for dopamine to become addictive, but there are really positive ways that dopamine's good. Does anybody here make lists? Does it feel good to check stuff off? You have hacked your dopamine system. That is a way of identifying the goals that you have and making progress. One of the challenges youth have is they set goals that are too extreme. I want to score 1,500 points in basketball by the time I graduate. I want to be valedictorian. And you know what happens? If they hit that goal, they feel good for about 5 or 10 minutes when they make it. We have to break it into the small subsets of goals that every day we have to recognize, here's all the things we need to do, and give ourselves credit when we do it. When I make lists, I'll even write stuff I already did that day down and check it off. That's a really good hack, because you've already done that stuff. But it's right. It's just a way of recognizing you've done some stuff that you need to do. Oxytocin. Some people call it the love hormone. It's what helps us to feel good when we interact with people we care about. It can be from touch, but it can also be face-to-face contact. One of the things that happened when we put masks on is we limited how much oxytocin would be released. Eyes are better than texting, but full face contact releases oxytocin at a different level. Touch, obviously, is valuable, being able to hug people. So for those of you who are struggling, who might struggle with mental health and you don't know what else to do, if you can get yourself to go get a massage, that's a great way to feel better. We know that massage and actually even taking warm baths can be really helpful. Pets are a great source of oxytocin release. I don't have a dog, my daughter does. That dog is so excited to see me. I mean, you don't get greetings like that from humans. But when you get that kind of interaction, it makes you feel good. It also distracts you from what else you feel good. So that's getting that oxytocin engagement. And one of my struggles with depression is when I'm not feeling good, I want to stay away from other people because I don't feel good about me. What I have learned is that when I'm starting to struggle, that's exactly when I need to go spend time with people. Now, I can't go spend 6 hours with a large group and not be overwhelmed by it, but I go find a friend or two and spend some time, quality time with people as much as I can. Serotonin, vitamin D, 31% of American adults are vitamin D deficient. And even the low-level vitamin D levels, the base levels, probably aren't enough for most people. Sunlight is the best way to get it, but we live in a part of the country where for about 5 months of the year, the radiation levels here just aren't high enough for us to get enough vitamin D. So some people need to supplement food and supplements. Vitamin D supplements are really inexpensive, but can make a big difference. Exposure to early day bright light isn't specific necessarily to serotonin, but it's also a really critical piece of getting our our sleep cycle to be regulated. If we can expose ourselves to early bright light, that makes a big difference. Oh, wait, I don't want to forget endorphins. Exercise and movement is absolutely essential. So I added a slide, but not to the version that's on here from that Australia study. It was a meta-analysis of hundreds of studies. Dance, number one, aerobic exercise, cognitive behavioral therapy, exercise plus cognitive behavioral therapy, walking or jogging, really important as a mental health improvement, reducing depression levels. You also get good endorphin release from laughter. So one of the things I like to do to help me go to sleep is have old comedy specials, ones I've already seen before. I can't watch new ones because I want to stay up and watch them, but it's amazing how a couple of laughs helps me go to sleep. Playing music can be a source of endorphin release. And there is a cheat code way to get endorphins, eating really spicy food. It's not really good whole body health, but it can make a difference. Fixing our brain circuitry and thought patterns. One of my really bad habits when I was in high school was 100 times a day I said, Mike, you are a loser, you're an idiot, nobody likes you. Just the meanest stuff that I never would have said to somebody else, but I said it to myself constantly. What I didn't realize then, and what we now know from lots of neuroscience research, is that our thought patterns, what we think, strengthens certain neurons and synapses. And the ones that get the strongest are the ones where new information routes through first. So if you're really negative, have a negative self-image, and you keep exposing yourself to that, you're going to see everything that comes around the world from that negative perspective. So it becomes very easy to become fixated on thoughts and ideas. One of the real risk factors for suicide loss is having rigid thought patterns. We see that a lot in people who are high functioning on the autism spectrum, and we see it a lot with really high achieving young adults. And we've had a big increase in suicide loss among high-achieving adults. Being able to build dexterity in our thought patterns is really crucial. Fortunately, there's a whole lot of ways to develop that neuroplasticity. Learning foreign languages, creating music, creative expression of any kind. Anything where you're cooking, gardening, woodworking, anything where you're creating something. Reading complex literature, reading escapist literature where you go travel to another part of the world can be helpful. What else is on there? I think I covered most of it. And actually even some video games. Video games can be addictive and overwhelming, but there are some ways that the complexity of some video games are complex enough that it requires problem-solving skills. Puzzles are also really good. So anybody who does Wordle or Connections or Sudoku, anything like that, that helps to build that neuroplasticity. A lot of talk therapies, cognitive behavioral therapies, other things that young adults and adults do, it's really about helping people strengthen other parts of their brain. Because we do get fixated on particular thought patterns, and what a lot of therapists are working on doing is helping you to think about things from a different perspective that creates more connections. So think about it this way. Each of your brains, depending on who you ask, it has between 86 billion and 100 billion neurons. Each one of those has more than 10,000 points of connection. There's also 100 different brain chemicals that make information move. So when I'm talking to young adults, I tell them, just go get a brain coach. There is nothing more complex than the human brain. Nobody hesitates to get somebody to teach them how to play 88 keys on a piano. But with our brain, we're supposed to just figure this out with that level of complexity. We need people to help us. Sometimes there are chemistry issues that we can't fix with self-care. Sometimes there are thought patterns that we can change, and there are techniques that can work on it. So how do we look at the world? It's about reframing that experience. You could look at this part of the hike and go, oh my goodness, look at the obstacles I've got to go around there. Oh, this is a cool challenge. If I came in looking at this as, I'm not going to be able to do this, this is hard, I'm not going to be able to do it. If I look at it as a cool challenge, I'm going to figure out the best I can how to get through there. At University of California, Berkeley, they actually put together what I call a lot of brain hacks that help fixing your thought patterns. So if you go to ggia.berkeley.edu, you can learn more about this study. But what they do is, in kind of 1 to 5 minute increments every day, they send you information to help figure out what brain hacks might be able to be helpful to you. One of the brain hacks is, how do you shift your perspective? How do you find what the silver lining is? So do you look at the mistakes and failures as mistakes and failures, or, oh, I learned something from that? One of the books I wrote was on a mother who created a program that operated in a lot of schools for a long time after she lost her 16-year-old son to suicide. It's the JKB program. It used to be in some of the 204 and 203 schools. But one of the things that she always told the young adults who went through the program is the only failure is a failure to learn. So shift your perspective. Find awe. Savor something that inspires awe. Nature certainly inspires awe. Maybe not as much right around here, but you can even find it around here. Go to Mount Hoya and Blackwell Forest Preserve and look at the expanse from the top of the trees. It's still awesome. You go sit on a lake, it can be really cool. Our children can be a great source of awe. They say some of the funniest things and things that we're like, where did you come up with that? How did your brain get there? Recognize that awe. Great performances, anything that we see, whether we're into sports or theater or music or whatever, allow yourself to be inspired by that. Celebrate another person's joy. It's not just about how we feel, it's about the people around us, and sometimes getting outside of how we feel can be really powerful in helping us to feel better. Think about our values, practice our values, be proud of the difficult decisions we have to maintain our values. Gratitude was one of the ones that I found in a self-help book in high school that made a difference for me, was just making a conscious effort every day to think about things that I was grateful for. And I remember one particular day I couldn't come up with anything at the end of the day, and I'm like, you know what? I had a good apple at lunch. And it was a good apple. I still remember that apple. It's like, this is a lunch apple? How did this one sneak in? But it makes a difference to just go through the process of not focusing on the negative, but thinking about what's positive, what's good out there. And they don't have to be good things. Volunteering, the consider your sources of goodness, the difference we make for other people. How do we take our difficulties in life and use the lessons learned to help other people? How do we make a difference in other people's lives? Doing something kind. A particular day, and we never know when saying a kind word can make a difference. One of the days I went to school, and I went to Geneva High School, so not that far away from here. I went to school planning to take my life at the end of the day. Memories take you back to the emotions. And I still remember walking through the hall. I was just like, if something good doesn't happen by the end of the day, I can't think of any reason to be here. This is too painful. And Dave Reed, he was a kid I knew, not really a friend, but just somebody I had worked with. He walked up to me and said, hey, Mike, that article you wrote in the school newspaper, that was really good. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not a failure. Something I do is good. Saying kind things to other people can make an enormous difference. People who are struggling don't always see what's good about them. They get focused on what's negative. They don't see the good. It's really important even when you're disciplining a kid, when you're holding them accountable for something, to say, hey, how do we move on from this? Where are we going to go? You've got so much going for you. And to remind them, here's 5 right off the top of my head. That saying something kind, doing something kind can make an enormous difference. And then laughter. So this is kind of how Berkeley summarized a lot of things that I'd learned over my lesson. I thought this was a great way to do it, and it's a tool that people can sign up, and you can be part of their research on what kind of difference this makes. But it's a really terrific program. How many of you sleep 7.5 to 8 hours every night? Kids don't, many of them. I taught teen mental health first aid to a group of student leaders a couple of weeks ago, and I asked the kids how many of them slept at least 8.5 to 9 hours, which is what they should be sleeping. And half of the group just started laughing out loud. It was like, what kind of ridiculous question is that? You know, several of the kids were sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night. Every thought you have, everything you see, everything you hear is firing synapses. When that happens, it creates waste material in your brain. That waste material is going to sit in the brain until you get to the restorative end of a night's sleep. So if you go several days in a row without sleeping effectively, do you feel like you're slowing down? You're struggling with your memory? You are, because there's waste material sitting in there that's interfering with your ability to think clearly. So we need sleep to help us cope with stress. Turns out we're actually solving problems. Has anybody ever done a crossword puzzle where you couldn't answer everything and they put it down and you came back to it hours later and some of the answers popped right at you? In the background, your brain's still thinking about the questions that are out there. It's still trying to, and while you're sleeping, it's doing that. It's really important for kids to sleep before they're taking a big test. A lot of professional sports teams now will introduce their new plays right before the nap time that is scheduled for the professional athletes. They sleep a lot, but they also exert at an extraordinary level. So we need that to bolster our learning, to consolidate our memories. Matthew Walker is one of my favorite sleep experts. There are some others, but I love the stuff he talks about. And you can find podcasts where he's being interviewed if you don't want to get a book. There are lots of sleep routine changes that can make a big difference. So it's a big part is finding your routine. And the biggest part of that is either wake up at the same time every day or go to bed at the same time every night. Doing one of those is going to help improve your routine. Really warm baths or showers an hour or two before bed make a difference because your body, first of all, it gets warms up your body, that gets the blood flow up, which increases the oxygen to your brain. But then as that warmth cools off, your body cools off rapidly. Your body cooling rapidly is a strong signal that it's time to go to sleep. So eating lightly at night, don't do late night cardio, don't get on the treadmill at 9 o'clock if you want to go to sleep at 10:30. It makes it way more difficult. Caffeine, of course, and disconnecting devices. And this is really important for kids. One of my pet peeves with schools is teachers who post grades at midnight or 1 in the morning. Because you know what's happening? Those kids are staying, they're good students, are staying up waiting for those grades to post. I would, Allison, have a policy, no grades get posted after 10 p.m. We need to remove reasons for them to stay up. We also need to get the devices out of their rooms. They need to be separated from it, need to be able to protect that time. A lot of you probably are going, boy, it would be great to do all this self-care stuff, but I don't have the time. So we have to think about how do we find 5-minute increments or 10-minute increments? How do I create that space? Or how do I at least acknowledge this is what I need? I need time on my drive home that I'm just going to listen to something that I laugh at? Or what is it that you're going to do? And you probably need multiple things. Take a walk every day. The different techniques are out there. Figuring out which ones are most meaningful to you is important. But finding that time can be really difficult. There's a lot of emerging research on micro workouts. The idea of taking 1 to 3 minutes to just do something every hour or two, just to get our bodies moving. When we're sitting in desks for too long, and this is true for students too, it's unhealthy. A quick high-intensity burst, doing things like walking stairs, holding walking meetings, pacing while you're on the phone, if you can pace while you're breathing. If you're pumping gas, do stretching exercises. I know it sometimes gets ridiculous, but people look at me while I'm pumping gas, and I'm sitting there stretching and bent over, and what is he doing? Well, I'm kind of sore from sitting in the car for too long. I need to stretch. I need that. Don't go to the closest parking space. This is an argument my wife and I have all the time. She's like, why did you not park there? It's in front. I'm like, because I don't want to park there. I want to walk a little bit and move my legs. Things like jumping jacks. So doing chair squats, just sitting up and down the chair for 60 or 120 seconds. Using hand weights, anything you can do that can add some micro movement into your day can make an enormous difference over a period of time, just getting that part into our health. So other research supported mental health actions. We talked about social connection. 5 minutes? Great. Journaling. When we're thinking about the world, we have lots of thoughts swirling around in our head. Those thoughts aren't necessarily what we think. They're just ideas that are being sent to us to evaluate. When we journal, or when we have a conversation, when somebody asks us how we're doing and really wants the answer as opposed to just the normal basic conversation, we bring clarity as we're speaking about what we're doing or as we're writing. We get clarity around what we really experience and what we really feel about it. It's very helpful. Nature walks, let's see, I talked about many of these. Creating clean spaces, decluttering can be very helpful for some people as a way to just organize. When the world seems chaotic, having something that feels like it's not chaotic can be very helpful to many people. And a big piece is setting boundaries. Saying no to stuff that you don't have the capacity or energy to tackle then. Many of us are reluctant to say no to doing things that we don't really want to do or don't have the capacity to do, or that we've got somebody who just drains us energy-wise. That can make a big difference. And actually, just as an aside thought, what do you think are the 2 most transferable emotions? Usually people will say things like anger. It's calm and anxiety. So just think about this. Do you have people in your life who, when you're there, you're always more anxious? And are there people in your life where you feel calmer when you're around them? Model that calm, especially when you're feeling anxious. Take that step back, do some deep breathing. Give yourself a chance to get to that calm, because if you're anxious, your kids are going to feel that anxiety, and help them to understand that they can do that for themselves too. Sometimes life doesn't go as we plan. Let's see if I can get this to work. This was also on our hiking trip. So what do you do when you fall down? You get back up, and that's your new starting point. So your starting point isn't the hill where you were before. I've been able to do some really amazing hikes, but when I have a foot injury, I can barely walk a mile. Should I feel bad that I can only walk a mile because I need to get back to where I was? No, that's my starting point. My goals are based on where my starting point is that day. Progress. It's not about perfection, it's about making progress. It's about taking breaths to breathe, taking time to breathe, taking time to experience awe, taking time to enjoy a moment. Just having something that we take away from that day. Dehydration is actually a big source of mental health challenges. How many kids try to go through the day without drinking anything because they don't want to have to go into use the bathroom at school? So dehydration issues have an effect for sure. Sharing our lives with friends, sharing our experiences with friends makes them more meaningful, more powerful than doing it alone. So as kids have become more isolated, that has an effect on them. We have to adapt to changing circumstances. When we're out in nature, nature rules. You may have gone out on a calm day and suddenly it turns turbulent and then you have to adapt. And life is like that. Things, I tell my kids, you're always 1 second away from everything in your life being different. You live in the moment, but you have to prepare for what could happen. And appreciate your process and make sure you take time for the good parts that happen in your day. And lastly, use the available support. So this was Half Dome in Yosemite. I got up here and I looked at a 45-degree angle of steep, slick granite where if you fall, you're going over the cliff. And I went, I don't know if I'm going to do this. But they do have metal stanchions and some chains. And I stood at the bottom, I looked and said, oh, there's people who look about in my kind of shape who are making it up there. I can do this. So that role model and using the supports. I held onto those chains. There was somebody who tried to walk up it without it, and I saw him start to slip. I'm like, no, none of that's worth it. But there are other things. If you are working with a kid who's struggling and you don't know what to do, call 988. It's the crisis lifeline, but it's not just there for a crisis. It's if you've got somebody that you want to help and you don't even know where to start. They are a great resource. Your health is worth putting the effort in, doing the self-care, and making sure you take care of yourself, and then helping your kids have the time and energy and capacity to do the things that they need for them. So thank you very much, and I really appreciate you being here.